The rain hit the glass walls of Carter Dynamics headquarters like handfuls of thrown gravel, sharp and relentless, turning the city below into a blur of fractured lights. On the 42nd floor, inside a boardroom where billion-dollar decisions usually arrived wrapped in confidence, Amelia Carter stood alone at the far end of the polished table, staring at a screen that had just erased 6 years of her life in less than 30 seconds. Red numbers bled downward across the monitor. Stock price collapsing. Investor confidence gone. Emergency alerts flooding every device in the room. Someone had leaked confidential merger documents an hour before dawn, and now every major financial network in the country was tearing apart the youngest female CEO in the industry, as if they had been waiting for her to fail. Her father's portrait on the wall behind her seemed almost cruel tonight. William Carter, the founder who had built the empire, dead 3 years now, leaving her his company and a board full of men who never believed she deserved the chair she sat in. Her phone vibrated again. Another board member. Another demand. Another warning that by morning she could lose controlling power if she failed tonight's investor meeting across the city. She ignored the call and headed for the elevator heels, striking marble like controlled gunshots, refusing to let anyone see panic in her face. Downstairs, the storm had worsened. Her driver was nowhere in sight. Security informed her he had quit 10 minutes earlier, walked out without explanation. "What do you mean, quit?" Amelia snapped, already soaked by the wind at the building entrance. "You're telling me my driver disappears the night my company is under attack?" The answer came in nervous silence until a black sedan rolled quietly to the curb, older than the luxury fleet she usually used, headlights cutting through the rain. Behind the wheel sat a man she had never seen before. Simple, dark coat, calm eyes. No sign of apology, no attempt to impress, just stillness. Temporary replacement security muttered. Agency sent him fast. Amelia almost laughed from disbelief. Of course they did. She opened the rear door, slid in, and immediately began reviewing damage reports on her tablet. Midtown Regency Hotel. 15 minutes. If you can't make that, I'll find someone who can. The driver didn't answer at first. The car pulled away smoothly into the storm, silent except for wipers cutting rhythm through heavy rain. Then his voice came low and controlled. "We're not taking Lexington." Amelia looked up, irritated. "That's the fastest route. Not tonight." Before she could argue, he turned sharply into a narrower street, ignoring her glare in the mirror. "Did you hear me?" she said, colder now. "I said Lexington." His eyes remained on the road. "And I said not tonight." 3 seconds later, headlights exploded behind them. A black SUV tore through the intersection they would have entered, smashing into another vehicle with violent force, metal twisting under a burst of horn and shattered glass. Amelia froze, breath caught halfway. If they had stayed on her route, that impact would have hit her side directly. The sedan continued forward as if nothing had happened. Her fingers tightened around the tablet. "How did you know?" she asked, voice suddenly smaller than she intended. The driver finally looked into the mirror. Calm, precise, dangerous in a way she could not define. "Because the same SUV has been behind your building for 22 minutes, he said. "And because when powerful people panic, they usually make desperate mistakes." Amelia stared at him now, truly seeing him for the first time, not a hired driver, not some exhausted man taking overtime, but someone whose silence had edges. "Who are you?" she whispered. A flash of lightning lit his face. No fear, no hesitation, only a strange sadness hidden beneath discipline. "Tonight," he said quietly, eyes returning to the road, "I'm the reason you're still alive." Amelia did not speak again for the next full minute, but silence inside the car no longer felt ordinary. It had weight now, dense and electric, as if every drop of rain striking the roof was counting down to something she did not yet understand. Outside Manhattan moved in streaks of blurred light, but inside that older black sedan, everything felt unnaturally controlled, especially the man driving it. He had neither asked for instructions nor apologized for ignoring hers. He simply drove like someone who already knew where danger waited before the city itself did. Amelia lowered her tablet slowly and looked at the back of his head, at the stillness in his shoulders, the way his hands rested on the steering wheel with absolute precision. Not stiff, not nervous, deliberate. "You noticed that SUV 22 minutes before security did?" She finally asked, voice quieter, now no longer carrying the sharp authority she used in boardrooms. "Security watches entrances," he replied. "People planning something usually watch exits." His tone remained neutral, but his answer irritated her because it sounded too intelligent for a temporary driver. "What agency sent you?" she asked. "Brookline Executive Transit. And they train drivers to profile criminal intent." Now, some things don't need training. The answer came too fast, too clean. Amelia narrowed her eyes. She was used to spotting hesitation in negotiations, detecting fear in investors, reading lies in half-sentences. But this man gave her nothing. Even his face in the mirror remained unreadable. Her phone buzzed again. Victor Hale. She answered this time. "Where are you?" Victor's voice exploded before she spoke. "The investors are already seated. Reed is telling them you may delay the vote. I'm 10 minutes out. 10 minutes is enough to lose $50 million tonight." Amelia glanced ahead. "Then tell them to wait." Victor lowered his voice. "And Amelia, whoever leaked those merger files knew internal code names from before your father died. Someone close is playing a long game." The line ended. Amelia looked up again, suddenly aware the driver had heard every word, but offered no reaction. "You understand corporate espionage too?" she asked sharply. "I understand panic sounds the same in every industry," he said. They reached the hotel in exactly 11 minutes. Not 15. 11. The sedan stopped beneath the Regency's glass entrance, where cameras and security lights reflected off wet pavement like cold fire. Amelia opened the door, then paused. "Wait here," she said, unsure why she added it. "I may need to leave fast." He gave a slight nod. "You will." That answer stayed with her as she entered the lobby. Upstairs, the emergency investor meeting felt worse than expected. Faces turned the moment she entered, bankers, legal advisors, foreign stakeholders, all studying her like a damaged asset. Victor Hale stood beside the projection screen, silver-haired, immaculate, carrying concern, like performance art. Nathan Reed leaned back with visible impatience. Amelia spoke for 37 minutes without notes, rebuilding confidence piece by piece, explaining why leaked files did not invalidate the acquisition, why Carter Dynamics still controlled the logistics patent chain competitors needed. She was halfway through answering a German investor's legal question when the screen behind her flickered. Then changed. Her presentation vanished. A private internal archive appeared, files no one outside executive access should have possessed. Old acquisition drafts, founder signatures, hidden transfers. The room erupted. Victor turned pale. Reed swore under his breath. Amelia froze because one file name on screen had not existed publicly for 7 years, Project Helios Transfer Authorization. Her father had buried that title before his death. No one alive outside 3 people should have known it. "Kill that screen," Victor shouted. ET staff scrambled. Investors stood. Questions hit like gunfire. Amelia's pulse surged, but before chaos fully broke, one thing caught her attention. The hotel doors at the back opened quietly, and her driver stepped inside. He did not rush, did not panic. He simply stood near the rear wall, eyes lifting once to the projection screen. And for the first time since meeting him, Amelia saw something crack beneath his calm expression. Recognition, sharp and immediate. He knew exactly what he was looking at. Security cut power seconds later, but the damage was done. Investors demanded recess. Reed stormed out. Victor grabbed Amelia's arm hard enough to sting. That file was sealed before you became CEO, he hissed. Who else has access? Amelia looked past him toward the rear of the room. The driver was already gone. 20 minutes later, she returned downstairs with her head pounding and her company hanging by threads. The rain had softened, but the city now looked colder. The sedan still waited exactly where she left it. She entered without speaking. He pulled away before she gave destination. Home, he asked. No, Amelia said. Drive. He glanced once in the mirror. Anywhere quiet. They crossed into lower Manhattan where traffic thinned. Finally, Amelia leaned forward. You knew that file name upstairs. I recognized it. From where old paperwork. Drivers don't usually recognize sealed acquisition files. Some paperwork stays with people longer than jobs do. Again, an answer that revealed nothing and too much at once. Amelia stared out the window, then asked, What's your name, Ethan? Last name? A pause. Brooks. How long have you been driving? Depends what you count as driving. She almost laughed despite herself. You answer every question like a lawyer avoiding prison. No, he said quietly. Lawyers usually answer slower. That earned the first real breath of amusement from her all night, though she hid it quickly. At a red light, his old phone lit up on the console. A message appeared briefly before the screen dimmed. Lily waiting. Don't be late again. Amelia noticed a child's cartoon sticker half peeled from the back case. You have a daughter? Yes. How old? 8. His voice softened by half a shade barely detectable, but there. Who's with her neighbor until I finish? And you still took a last-minute overnight shift. Some nights matter more than sleep. The answer landed differently now. She looked again at his coat sleeve, carefully stitched at the cuff, repaired by hand instead of replaced. Not poor, exactly. Just practical, controlled, deliberate in every detail. Then her phone rang again. Victor. She answered on speaker without thinking. We found how the archive reopened, Victor said fast. Someone used an old founder-level credential tonight. Amelia's eyes lifted slowly toward the mirror. Victor continued. There are only 2 dead credentials in that tier. Your father's. He stopped, and Amelia asked, and one belonging to a former co-founder removed before public launch. Ethan's hands remained steady on the wheel, but Amelia saw one finger tighten once, only once. Name, she asked Victor. Papers shuffled on the line. Brooks. Ethan Brooks. Silence filled the car so completely, even the engine sounded distant. Amelia stared at the mirror. Ethan did not look back this time. The city lights crossed his face in fragments as he drove, jaw set, expression unreadable again, but now every strange answer, every impossible observation, every instinct from the last 2 hours rearranged themselves into something larger, something impossible. Victor was still talking through the speaker, asking if she was listening, but Amelia barely heard him. Because at that exact moment, the quiet, temporary driver guiding her through midnight traffic was no longer just a man earning overtime for his daughter. He was a ghost her father had erased from company history, driving her car like he already knew exactly where this night was heading. Amelia did not end the call immediately. Victor's voice kept speaking through the phone, demanding answers, asking where she was, warning that Nathan Reed had already begun contacting 2 board members privately. But the words lost shape the moment Ethan's name finished echoing inside the car. She slowly pressed the screen dark and let silence return, though now silence had become dangerous because it carried too much truth waiting to surface. Outside the city passed in silver reflections, bridges glowing through mist, while inside the sedan every detail felt sharpened, the old leather on the steering wheel, the faint scent of rain on Ethan's coat, the absolute steadiness in his breathing. You should have told me, Amelia said at last, her voice low, controlled, but no longer carrying accusation as much as disbelief. Ethan kept his eyes forward. You wouldn't have let me stay behind the wheel if I had. You think lying was better, I never lied. You accepted the job as a temporary driver while hiding that your name is buried inside my company's original legal foundation. You asked if I could drive? I said yes. That answer should have irritated her. Yet what unsettled her more was how calm he remained, as though he had already expected this confrontation long before tonight began. Pull over, she said. He obeyed without hesitation, stopping beside the East River where rain had softened into mist drifting over black water. Amelia stepped out, first heels striking wet pavement, wrapping her coat tighter against the wind. Ethan came around the front of the car but kept distance, not defensive, not apologetic, simply waiting. Manhattan rose behind them like cold glass cliffs. My father never mentioned your name, Amelia said. Then he kept one promise. What promise? Ethan looked toward the river before answering. That if he removed me, he would remove me completely. Amelia studied him carefully now under the pale streetlight. He did not look like the ambitious corporate men she knew. No visible hunger, no vanity. Yet nothing about him suggested defeat either. He carried restraint the way some men carried wealth, quietly, but unmistakably. Why now? She asked. Why appear tonight? Because whoever opened those archives used credentials that should not exist anymore. And because once that file surfaced, Victor Hale stopped being careful. Amelia crossed her arms. You came back for revenge. If I wanted revenge, your board meeting would already be over. The answer came cold enough to stop her next accusation. He reached into his coat slowly and removed a folded envelope, old edges worn. Inside were photocopies, ownership drafts, signatures, legal amendments with dates from 8 years ago. Amelia scanned the first page and saw her father's handwriting. Her pulse tightened. These were never filed, she whispered. No, Ethan said, because your father changed his mind after my wife died. She looked up sharply. What does that mean? For the first time, something heavier entered his face. Not anger, not bitterness, something closer to grief, disciplined into silence over many years. It means Carter Dynamics was supposed to launch under 2 names. Amelia read again. William Carter, Ethan Brooks, founding equity agreement. 40% listed under Ethan. Her father's signature. Ethan's signature, dated before public launch. Why would he erase you? She asked. Ethan took a breath, eyes remaining on the river. Because grief changes men differently. I wanted out after Claire died. He wanted control before investors smelled instability. He offered to buy everything fast, said he'd protect Lily's future if I disappeared quietly. Then Victor handled the legal side. Amelia understood immediately why Victor's name returned everywhere like poison. And you trusted him. For 3 days. Then half the paperwork changed. She looked again at the documents. You kept this all these years. Some papers matter more when people insist they don't. Her phone buzzed again, but this time Amelia ignored it completely. For the first time in years, she felt something she had not allowed herself since inheriting the company: uncertainty about her father's legacy. Not because Ethan's evidence destroyed it, but because it complicated everything she thought she knew. Her father had built Carter Dynamics into an empire and raised her to believe loyalty mattered above all else. Yet now, one missing signature suggested he had built part of that empire on silence. If you had this, she said, you could have exposed it long ago. Ethan looked at her directly then, and the force of his gaze unsettled her because there was no triumph in it. I had a 6-month-old daughter and a funeral bill. Exposure costs energy, grief doesn't leave you. The answer landed harder than she expected. Somewhere behind them, traffic moved, but this stretch of river remained strangely isolated. Amelia folded the papers carefully and handed them back. Then why become a driver? Because Victor started moving money through old shell accounts last month. I needed access close enough to watch without announcing myself. You could have contacted legal counsel. Legal counsel reports to boards. Boards report to fear. A bitter smile touched Amelia despite the situation. You sound like someone who remembers exactly why he left. Some systems improve, some just buy better furniture. That almost made her laugh, and she hated that he could still disarm her while revealing he had stood in her world long before she entered it. The attraction arrived not like romance, but like dangerous awareness. The realization that this quiet man carried more gravity than most executives she had spent years negotiating with. No performance, no manipulation, just intelligence sharpened by loss. Her phone rang again. Nathan Reed this time. She answered. "Where are you?" Reed demanded immediately. "Victor says you vanished with company-sensitive material." Amelia's eyes narrowed. "Victor talks too much. Tomorrow morning there's a board vote. If investors panic again, control clauses trigger. Then maybe tomorrow morning everyone should arrive prepared." Reed lowered his voice. "Be careful who you trust tonight, Amelia. Especially old ghosts." The call ended. She looked at Ethan. They already know something. Victor probably realized the Founder Archive didn't open by itself. "Did you open it?" Ethan met her eyes. "No." That answer came instantly, and she believed him before logic could object. "Then who did?" "Someone inside who wants Victor exposed but doesn't trust surviving the attempt." They returned to the car, but now Amelia moved to the front passenger seat instead of the back. Ethan noticed but said nothing. The city resumed around them as he drove downtown toward her penthouse. "Tell me about Claire," Amelia said unexpectedly after several minutes. He kept driving, surprised enough that she noticed. "Why?" "Because your face changes every time her name appears." The answer took time. "She handled risk modeling," he said finally. "Better than anyone I knew. At Carter Dynamics, before it had a real name. And Lily, she was born the year Claire died." Amelia looked toward him carefully. "You raised her alone from the beginning. Mostly. There are neighbors, teachers. One retired nurse downstairs who thinks I forget breakfast too often." Amelia smiled faintly despite herself. "Do you? Sometimes." So the legendary co-founder forgets breakfast. The legendary co-founder drives a borrowed sedan and argues with parking meters too. That earned a real laugh from her this time, brief but genuine, and the sound changed the air inside the car more than either expected. For a moment, corporate war disappeared and only two exhausted adults remained, one carrying inherited pressure, the other carrying years of buried absence. When they reached her building, Amelia did not get out immediately. "Tomorrow morning," she said, "you come with me. As driver, as whatever version of yourself frightens Victor most." He looked at the building entrance, then back ahead. "That will complicate your morning. My morning already involves a board preparing to remove me, and if they learn you've been hiding me in your car overnight." Amelia studied him, then said quietly, "Let them wonder why." A beat passed. Neither moved. Rain traced thin lines down the windshield. Then Ethan's old phone lit again. A photo appeared before the screen, dimmed Lily asleep on a couch under a blanket sent by whoever waited with her. Amelia saw it before he could turn the phone over. Something softened in her expression. "Go home," she said more gently now. "You have someone waiting." He nodded once, but before she opened the door, he spoke. "Victor will move first thing at 8. He'll try isolating you before the vote. Then I'll arrive at 7:30. "Good. And Ethan." He looked at her. "Don't disappear before morning." For the first time that night, something almost like warmth crossed his face. Not full smile, just the faintest shift. "I didn't come back to disappear." Amelia stepped out, but halfway to the lobby she turned. The sedan remained where it was, headlights low rain silvering the hood. For reasons she could not explain, the city no longer felt like something collapsing beneath her. It felt like something hidden had finally begun moving in her favor. Upstairs, while the elevator rose, She opened her father's old digital archive for the first time in years and searched one word, Brooks. The first file appeared instantly. Locked. Founder access required. Yet beneath the lock, one line remained visible in faded metadata. If this file opens, it means Ethan came back. Listen before you judge. Amelia stared at the screen as the elevator doors opened, realizing sleep would not come tonight, because somewhere between a sabotaged board meeting and a rain-soaked river, the temporary driver she had hired in desperation had already begun changing the shape of everything she thought she understood, including the dangerous new feeling she had no time to name. By 7:15 the next morning, Carter Dynamics headquarters already felt like a battlefield disguised as architecture. The marble lobby gleamed under cold morning light, but tension moved faster than the elevator's assistants, whispering legal teams arriving early, investors calling from overseas before markets fully opened. Amelia stepped out of the elevator wearing a charcoal suit, sharp enough to armor uncertainty, yet her pulse had not slowed since dawn. She had slept less than 40 minutes, most of that interrupted by one sentence from her father's hidden archive, repeating in her mind, "If this file opens, it means Ethan came back. Listen before you judge." She crossed the executive floor with her tablet in hand, but every glance from employees carried the same question. Was she about to lose the company today? Victor Hale stood outside the boardroom, already waiting, silver tie. Perfect expression, carefully arranged into concern. "You're early," he said, though irritation flickered beneath the smile. Amelia did not slow. "You sound disappointed." Victor matched her pace. "Nathan Reed has 2 proxy votes prepared. If you want to survive this morning, emotion won't help. Neither will lies." That made him pause half a step. What exactly does that mean? Amelia turned only enough to let him see that she was no longer uncertain. "It means I'm done hearing half-truths dressed as strategy." Victor's eyes sharpened. "You met someone last night." She stopped outside the boardroom doors. "Maybe I met the wrong ghost." For the first time, genuine tension crossed Victor's face before he recovered. "Whatever story you heard, remember one thing: dead founders leave behind paperwork, not fairness." Before Amelia answered, Nathan Reed emerged from inside the room, already aggressive. "Investors are connected. Legal counsel is here. Let's not waste time pretending this isn't damage control." Amelia entered without another word. The boardroom lights came alive automatically, reflecting off glass walls overlooking the city her father once ruled from this very floor. 8 board members sat waiting, 2 legal advisors, 1 external auditor, and 3 remote investors appearing on screen. Every chair filled except one near the back, intentionally empty observer seat, unofficial, meaningless informal votes. Victor took his place at Amelia's right, as though habit alone entitled him to proximity. Reed opened immediately. "Before we proceed, I move to initiate emergency governance review under Article 9 due to material instability and compromised executive control." One board member nodded too quickly. Another avoided Amelia's eyes. Victor added his voice with practiced restraint. "No one is questioning Amelia's effort, but last night's unauthorized archive breach suggests founder-level credentials remain exposed. That creates legal vulnerability." Amelia stood slowly, letting silence stretch until even Reed became impatient. "Before any vote begins," she said, "I'd like legal counsel to explain whether a founding equity agreement can be nullified if its filing was intentionally altered prior to public launch." The room shifted instantly. Victor's hand tightened around his pen. Reed frowned. What filing? Amelia placed one photocopy on the table and slid it forward. Victor saw Ethan's name before anyone else and went pale despite himself. "Where did you get that?" he demanded too quickly. Amelia ignored him. Legal counsel lifted the document, scanning signatures. "This appears pre-incorporation." "Correct," Amelia said, "and incomplete because 140% founding stake was never fully transferred under final registry." Reed leaned forward. whose stake Amelia looked directly at Victor now. Ask him. Victor rose halfway from his chair. This is absurd. Those papers were invalidated years ago. Invalidated by whom, Amelia asked. By William Carter, after voluntary withdrawal. Then, where is the withdrawal signature? Victor opened his mouth, but before he answered, the boardroom doors opened. No one announced him. No one needed to. Ethan entered wearing the same dark coat, but without the driver's cap, without any attempt to disguise himself now. Calm, composed, carrying a slim black folder in one hand. For 3 full seconds, the room forgot how to breathe. Reed looked confused first, then irritated. Victor looked like a man seeing something buried return upright. Amelia did not sit. I believe this belongs in the room, she said quietly. Ethan crossed toward the empty observer chair, but stopped before sitting. Morning, he said, voice low, almost ordinary, which somehow made the shock worse. Reed snapped first. Who allowed him in? Amelia answered without looking away from Ethan. I did. Victor's control cracked. He has no standing here. Ethan finally looked at him. That depends which year's documents we use. The folder opened. Inside lay original notarized copies, not photocopies, originals, preserved carefully, signatures intact, timestamps visible, including one attachment Amelia had never seen, an internal memorandum signed by her father 2 days before final launch, acknowledging temporary equity freeze pending bereavement review after Claire Brooks's death. Legal counsel took it, eyes widening line by line. This changes filing sequence 1, advisor whispered. Victor stepped forward. These documents were never submitted because they became void. Ethan spoke before Amelia could. They became inconvenient. The room froze again because Ethan's tone held no anger, only certainty sharpened over years. Reed stood now impatient. Even if this is authentic, why appear now? Ethan met his gaze. Because someone used my dormant credential last night to open archive sectors only founders can reach. Which means either Victor has been preserving dead access illegally, or someone inside your finance office forgot dormant systems leave trails. Amelia tapped her tablet and projected a screen onto the wall transaction logs she had pulled before sunrise. Shell accounts. Transfers through subsidiaries. Small amounts at first, then larger hidden diversions routed through procurement branches Victor supervised personally. Murmurs rose instantly. Victor turned toward the screen and lost color entirely. Those logs are incomplete, he said, voice tighter now. Ethan added calmly, they continue for 14 months. He slid another page forward, account chain maps, legal references offshore, routing timestamps. Reed grabbed one sheet and read fast, disbelief replacing aggression. These are investor reserve transfers. Yes, Ethan said, timed every quarter before audit windows. One remote investor on screen leaned forward sharply. Victor, explain this. Victor tried once more to recover authority. This man disappeared 8 years ago and returns carrying selective documents the same night our systems are attacked. You're trusting coincidence over loyalty, Amelia answered him this time, voice colder than anyone had heard all year. No. I'm trusting the one person in this room who didn't spend the last decade profiting from my father's silence. Victor looked at her as if that betrayal cut deeper than exposure itself. Your father trusted me. Ethan's reply came instantly. Your problem is that he trusted grief more. The words landed like impact. Victor's face hardened. You left. My wife died, and William built what you abandoned. William built what we started. Ethan said, finally allowing steel into his voice, and you spent years deciding which pieces belonged to the dead. Then, Amelia triggered the final file, the hidden audio pulled from her father's archive just before dawn. Her father's voice filled the room, older, tired, unmistakable. If Ethan ever returns, it means Victor pushed too far. Restore his access before Carter Dynamics becomes something I won't recognize. Silence followed like a physical force. Victor sank slowly back into his chair because even denial had nowhere left to stand. Reed stared at him, then at Amelia calculating survival. One board member whispered, "This means founder restoration rights apply." Legal counsel nodded reluctantly. "Pending immediate verification, yes. His dormant equity cannot be dismissed without judicial review." Ethan finally took the observer chair but did not lean back. Amelia looked around the table and understood in one breath that the balance of power had broken open. Victor no longer controlled fear. Reed no longer controlled momentum. For the first time since inheriting the company, she saw hesitation in every face that had once assumed her weakness. Then Ethan said the one sentence that ended the morning completely. "You didn't hire a driver yesterday, Amelia. You unknowingly brought the missing founder back through your own front door." No one moved after that, not because the statement was dramatic, but because everyone in that room understood exactly what it meant. Carter Dynamics had just discovered that the quiet man opening doors for its CEO the night before still legally owned enough of its origin to decide who walked out of this boardroom standing and who never returned. No one spoke for nearly 10 seconds after the boardroom doors closed behind Victor Hale. Even the city outside seemed quieter, as if 40 floors above Manhattan the air itself had paused to recognize that something old had finally been corrected. The emergency vote never happened. Nathan Reed withdrew his motion before legal counsel finished the second review. Investors requested private review sessions, but none of them looked at Amelia the way they had the night before. The doubt was gone. Not because the crisis had disappeared, but because she had stood through it without collapsing, and because the quiet man beside the window had changed the room without raising his voice once. Ethan remained standing near the glass after everyone left, looking down at the streets below where yellow taxis moved like distant signals through morning light. He did not look victorious. If anything, he looked like someone carrying a memory heavier than the documents that had just altered the company again. Amelia removed her heels under the table for the first time all morning, exhausted enough to stop pretending otherwise. "You could have taken that chair," she said softly. "The one at the head of the table." Ethan kept his eyes on the city. "I sat there once. It never improved mornings." She smiled despite herself. "You realize half the board now thinks I planned this with you. Did you?" She looked at him carefully. "No. But I'm beginning to think my father did." That finally drew a faint smile from him, brief and almost invisible. On the table between them remained the restored founder file, her father's voice still lingering in memory like unfinished advice. Amelia stood and walked closer. "Why didn't you come back sooner? Not for the company, for yourself." Ethan took longer to answer this time. "Because grief teaches you strange math. Some losses make winning feel unnecessary." Amelia lowered her eyes for a second. "And now," he looked at her. Then no walls left in his expression, only honesty stripped of defense. "Now my daughter is old enough to ask why her mother's work disappeared from history." That answer stayed between them longer than either expected. Hours later, long after lawyers moved through corridors and press statements were rewritten, Amelia drove herself for the first time in months to a quiet Brooklyn neighborhood Ethan had texted her without explanation. A small brick building stood at the corner laundry lines, moving lightly in afternoon wind. Bicycles leaned against fences, ordinary life untouched by billion-dollar battles. She hesitated before knocking, suddenly unsure why her pulse felt stranger here than inside any boardroom. The door opened before she could knock twice. A little girl with dark curls and curious eyes stood there holding a pencil in one hand. "You're the lady from Dad's car," she said immediately. Amelia blinked, then smiled. "I suppose I am. He said you asked too many questions." From inside Ethan's voice came instantly, "Lily." The girl grinned and stepped aside anyway. The apartment was simple, warm, filled with books, half-finished school drawings, one tiny pair of shoes near the couch, and the smell of soup still on the stove. It felt like another country compared to Carter Dynamics. Ethan emerged from the kitchen wearing rolled sleeves instead of his coat, somehow looking younger without the weight of corporate history around him. "You came." "You texted an address with no explanation," Amelia replied. "That usually means either danger or dinner." Lily looked between them with open interest. "Dad only texts people when something matters." Ethan gave his daughter a look that failed completely at seriousness. "Homework. Already done." She ran off before he could challenge it. Amelia watched the exchange quietly, seeing for the first time the version of Ethan no boardroom could reveal the softness he hid without effort, the instinctive patience in every glance toward his daughter. On the kitchen table lay one framed photograph, Claire Brooks smiling beside a younger Ethan in an unfinished warehouse that Amelia instantly recognized the first Carter Dynamics prototype floor before launch. Claire wore a hard hat, laughing at something outside frame. Amelia touched the frame lightly. She should have been remembered there. Ethan stood beside her, not too close, but close enough that silence no longer felt guarded. Maybe now she will be. Evening settled slowly through the apartment windows. Lily insisted Amelia stay for soup, then asked whether CEOs always looked tired, whether big buildings had secret rooms, whether her father had always driven badly in rain. Amelia laughed more in that small apartment than she had in weeks, perhaps months, and the laughter surprised her because nothing about the day should have allowed warmth after so much exposure and betrayal. Yet here it was, simple, undesigned, real. When Lily finally fell asleep on the couch halfway through a cartoon, Ethan carried her gently to the bedroom with the same care he had carried every invisible burden all these years. Amelia waited near the window until he returned. Outside, Brooklyn lights shimmered softer than Manhattan's sharp glass glare. "Legal says your founder rights can be fully restored by next week," she said quietly. Ethan leaned against the wall, arms folded loosely. "Then legal should save the paper." "I'm not taking the company back." Amelia turned. "You own enough to force a seat, and you fought hard enough to deserve it. You trust me that much. Your father did even when he trusted badly elsewhere." The answer landed deeper than praise. Amelia studied him, then asked the question she had avoided all day. "And if I ask you not to disappear again?" Ethan looked toward the hallway where Lily slept, then back at her. "Then I ask one condition, which is, school ends at 3. Some afternoons I leave at 2:30 no matter what crisis your board invents." Amelia smiled slowly, tired but real. "That sounds suspiciously like accepting a job." "No," he said, and for the first time the smile reached his eyes fully warm and unguarded. "That sounds like refusing the wrong title." A week later, Carter Dynamics issued a public correction. Founder Archives restored financial misconduct under investigation governance restructured. The press expected scandal, but what drew attention most was a photograph taken accidentally outside headquarters. One rainy morning, Amelia Carter stepping out of the building while Ethan Brooks opened the car door, not like a driver and CEO, but like two people, mid-conversation smiling at something private before entering the same storm together. Online, people guessed headlines: "Former founder returns," "Hidden partner revealed," "Billion-dollar betrayal exposed." None of them knew the quieter truth that some of the most important things restored that season never appeared in legal filings at all. Because every afternoon after 3, one black sedan could be seen leaving Midtown not toward investors or lawyers, but toward Brooklyn, where an 8-year-old girl waited by the window and where little by little two people who had met in crisis began learning that sometimes the person who drives you through collapse is also the one who teaches you how to arrive somewhere gentler.